I'm Renita Young, and this is Your Money Story. We're normally on Fridays at 10:30 Eastern, but we had to move to Thursday for this week. But don't worry, we have an incredible show for you today. Now, so before we get started, I have a question. And hey there, I see folks coming in waving. If you have ever had shame attached to paying off debt or even living paycheck to paycheck, raise your hand. Raise your hand. I totally have, and I bet a lot of you have too. And so today's guest is Tori Dunlap of Her First 100K. She's not only a financial feminist, but she's a woman who has recognized the form of privilege that she has carried from birth, and she uses it to help other people genuinely. And so I'm going to bring her on just a moment. Hang on. Hi,
Good
Tori. How are
morning.
you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I am well. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank
Really,
you for
welcome
having
to the show. Of course, well, I really appreciate you coming here. Let me just turn the volume up a little bit. Great. And so I've been fascinated by your content for some months now, anyway. And just it's really digestible. It's empowering, and hey, I love it, and I love your own personality behind it too. So. At the risk of me gushing anymore.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course, of course. And so we start out with your own money story on this show. And so what I know about you is that you started your first business at 9 years old. You
I
had a
did.
vending machine business.
Hmm.
How super cool. When I learned about your vending machine business, I actually told my sister and her husband, hey, listen, the two kids, they could have their own vending machine business to help fund college like you did, right? But what I'm interested is how did you get mindset in the first place? What did your parents instill in you to make you that way? What was your relationship like growing up with money?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a good relationship with money from my parents. I was lucky enough to learn not to overspend on credit cards and to learn how to save money and to even learn how to invest and negotiate my salary. And I knew the business thing was rare. I knew the starting my own business at age 9 and signing my own checks at age 10. I knew that that wasn't normal, but I thought, okay, everybody knows. Everybody knows how to avoid credit card debt and how to save money. And of course, I realized that wasn't the case. And I realized that I was the friend all of my friends were coming to for advice and guidance. And so I graduated college in May of 2016. Trump got elected not soon after that. And I started the blog that later became Her First 100K in December of that year, just a month after the election. Because for me, I realized with that financial education came a responsibility. With that privilege of a financial education came the responsibility to, share this information and to view personal finance and a financial education, financial foundation as a form of protest. I don't think we have any sort of equality for any marginalized group unless we have financial equality. And so I was working a 9 to 5 in marketing and growing Her First 100K on the side. And then we had a crazy year in 2019. I hit my own personal 100K goal, and then a month after quit my job to run my business full time. And now we're a global 7-figure business with a top business podcast and over 2 million followers. So it's been absolutely crazy to see this journey. And something that, I am so committed to is not just, of course, growing our business, but making sure that we are reaching as many people as possible and giving this education because it's so needed. And there's this huge gap between how we educate men and how we educate women. And I'm trying to do my part to fill it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You hit on so many different points that are worth teasing out throughout the course of this conversation. And so I just want to start back first, just a moment, by when I read your post on privilege from last year, I literally got chills. You know why? Because I was like, this is a woman who really does get it, who understands that financial equity is equity for all. When everyone has equity in financial sense, then that's when we have equity, because we know that the real deal is that money makes the world go round.
Right.
And so that's one thing. And also when it comes to men versus women, we hear a lot of different ways that people teach women how to invest for instance, over men, and how they try to characterize women's personality in investing. And so that's another good thing that we might debunk, right? And so what I want to talk to you specifically about, though, as we go into that, we're kind of weaving into our conversation, is shame, right? There is a huge amount of shame attached to having debt, right? And a lot of that is brought on, by maybe what people feel like they should have by that point, or they should not have done, right? And so I'm wondering if you did grow up with a great relationship with money, but did you have any small moments of shame or guilt when it came to managing your finances?
Totally. And I think, unfortunately, the experience of shame, judgment around money, affects everybody, but I think affects women specifically in a very different way. Because the interesting thing is, when we look at shame and judgment, for women, we get shame and judged around money and our money choices when we're at the start of our personal finance journey, right? We're shame and judged for maybe not knowing this information, or maybe making quote unquote bad choices, or asking quote unquote stupid questions, right? But the interesting thing is that as women build wealth, we are still shamed and judged. So for me, as I've built my own wealth now, and as I've overcome a lot of the shame and judgment at the beginning of my personal finance journey, women are judged when they're making 6-figure salaries, and when they have 7-figure businesses, and when they're doing financially well. And I think that's the difference between how we view men and women in terms of their personal finance journeys. Men are applauded for building wealth. They're applauded for, accelerating their careers and saving a lot of money and investing a lot of money. And women are shamed for it. And I think there's so much shame around money and personal finance. And the really disappointing thing for me is that a lot of times when people have tried to learn how to save money, tried to learn about, what's my next step in my financial journey, the prominent people that have been talking about money for decades are sometimes the ones doing the worst shaming. So I think that's it's a double-edged sword for women in terms of, like, there's going to be shame, unfortunately, in your entire personal finance journey. And then especially when people are just getting started, a lot of the experts they're turning to are the ones who are telling them, well, if you're not rich, it's because you don't work hard enough, right? Or it's the reason you can't buy a house is because you have coffee. And of course, not only does the math not work, it's just not good advice. It's shaming, it's judgmental, and it's asking for complete deprivation. It's saying, please achieve your financial goals only at the cost of your own happiness. So
I agree 100%. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that shame and judgment, unfortunately, are so seeped into our money conversations. And one of the ways we help bridge that shame and judgment, or we overcome it, is by having candid conversations about money. Talk about it with your friends, talk about it with your family, get a little comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Yeah. And get your personal finance advice from somebody that you trust, who also doesn't make you feel terrible.
Yes. And that's why, you very accurately describe why I host this show. Because it's so many different views out there. There's not just one way. And so I bring on all the options for people, right, so that they can be able to craft their own money story and really take charge of it. Because for far too long, people have not. And, that has people way behind the 8 ball when it comes to paying off debt, building wealth. And so just kind of sticking along that mindset of, shame. You have the shame of paying off debt. And then, just as you say very accurately, you have the shame and the guilt of maintaining and gaining debt. It's almost like survivor's guilt a little bit when you think about it, right? Yeah. And so you spoke before about how, like, when we think about what drives people to feeling the shame, you say living paycheck to paycheck. That's one of the feelings, of course, that make people feel ashamed. But you outlined a way that people can really start to look at their situation differently. And so just kind of take us through a process of how people can begin to renew their mind on this.
Yeah, I mean, the first step is acknowledging the shame exists, right? And being mindful of that, I think, in any aspect of your life is super important, right? Figuring out where are these feelings stemming from? We actually walk you through a journaling exercise on our podcast, Financial Feminist. We have a whole episode that's called Overcome Your Psychological BS Around Money, right?
Yeah.
And we have you walk through this kind of psychological exercise or this journaling exercise around your first money memory. The first time you can ever remember thinking consciously about money. For me, that was saving up enough money to go see Annie the musical. Because I was a theater kid.
I love it.
A theater major. Like, that was my thing, is like when I was 4 or 5, my parents were like, hey, if you want to go, save up your money. And that's the first time I remember thinking about money.
Okay.
For other people I talk to, for plenty of my clients, it's, the realization that we didn't have enough money. Mm-hmm. Or the first time I saw my parents argue about money. And so that first money memory can be really transformative and just understanding how money exists in your brain and where it started, right? And chances are a lot of maybe the shame, the guilt, the emotions you're feeling around money are directly tied to how you were brought up around money. So I think that that's one great thing that you can start to work through is before you even set financial goals, before you even work to make a plan, let's uncover some of what's going on so that this can be a sustainable practice for you. And so that you can constantly allow yourself, some grace and some understanding as you move forward. And then I would say, in terms of practical advice around personal finance, I always tell people to automate your savings, automate your goals, automate as much as you can, because then it happens on autopilot, right? So a lot of people come to me and they're like, I don't know how to save. I don't have enough to save. And even if it's just $10, $20 a month, right, that is so important because one, it's a little bit of money, right? It's not necessarily a lot of money, but it will accumulate over time. And two, you're building financial habits so that when you do have more money to save, this just happens naturally, right?
Yes.
You manage $2,000. Unfortunately, the way you're going to manage $20,000 or $200,000, right? So establishing your financial habits early can be super helpful. So set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings account and automate as much of your financial life as you can, because that's going to take some of that pressure off of you constantly thinking like, okay, I have to be thinking about my money all the time. No, your money's working for you without you having to consciously think about it.
Exactly. No, that's very good. And I love how you unpack that. And folks, which episode number is that, by the way?
Yeah, thank you. It is episode 3 of Financial Feminist.
Right, yeah, which is the top-rated podcast, personal finance podcast. It's right. I remember.
Within 72 hours of launch, we had hit the #1 business podcast spot, and and the entire season 1 is out, so you can binge the whole thing if you want.
Absolutely, and congratulations on that. And so you also kind of talk about how this old narrative of like, oh, you have to put every single dollar into your debt. That's old now. Like not only is it old, but it just doesn't work. And plenty of personal finance influencers and experts have said that when you pay off debt, just putting every single dollar that you have toward the debt doesn't work. You need to be able to have fun, right? And so tell us then, how do we begin to try to balance this debt payoff with, I still got to live my life?
Right. So I like equating it to a diet, right? If you tell me I can't have fried chicken, all I want is fried chicken. That's my favorite food, right? If you tell me I can't have something, literally psychologically, right? We've proven this. That doesn't work, right? Completely depriving yourself of things don't work. And it's also, life is really hard. And I don't want you minimizing your joy right now in order to pay off your debt and in order to save more money, right? There's a happy medium there. I've done well for myself in terms of saving. I've done well for myself, but I have still gone to Europe and I've still eaten at good restaurants and I've still had coffee when I want to have coffee. So there's a balance there to strike. The key, and again, I'll say it, is like automate as much as possible, because it's like paying yourself first, right? We talk about that in the personal finance community of paying yourself first, almost seeing paying off your debt, saving money as like a bill, right? It's another bill you have to take care of. And so making sure you set that aside first allows for a lot of flexibility later, because, okay, if I've already set aside the amount of money I need to save and, I've paid my expenses, cool. Everything else is fun money. Everything else I get to spend on what I want. I would say the other thing, and this is so important to my work. You don't have to stop spending money. You just have to stop spending money on things that you don't care about. right?
Good.
I don't need you
That's
to
good.
completely deprive yourself, but I do need you to be mindful of your spending choices and make sure that the ROI on your spending is really high. It's your hard-earned money. You work super hard to get that money, to get a paycheck. And I want you spending that money on things that actually bring you joy and that actually make your life better, instead of frivolous things or things you don't even remember buying. I remember early in my personal finance journey, and this sometimes still happens too, I'll look at my credit card statement and be like, what happened? Like, I don't even remember that purchase.
Every once in a while still happens.
Right. So if you are making those purchases consistently where you're either kind of like, you know what, that wasn't really worth the money, or I don't even remember making that purchase, I want you spending your money rather on things that you actually love and things that actually make your life better in the present moment, or save that money or contribute it to paying off your debt, right? Again, there's a balance there that you can strike. And if you are going to spend money, which you should, I don't want you spending money on things that you don't really like or care about. That's a waste of money. So spend it on things that you love.
Absolutely. We have so many different comments here. You know,
Yeah,
one person, so Stacy Owen just said, I needed to sit in on this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I agree. Just the first answer to the first question was enough for me. It was amazing. And also someone else talked, we talked about this when you said, you know, kind of the journaling exercise, when you record your first money memory, like financial trauma is real, you know, and so if we're not careful, we will pass financial trauma from generation to generation, because if mom and dad said that I can't, you know, we can't afford that, then baby at 5 years old heard and stopped asking for anything after that. Right. You know, that's a very real thing that happens. Go ahead. I'll tell you
that that's going to blow everybody's mind.
Okay.
The vast majority of your money story or the way you view money is cemented by age 7.
7?
7. Second grade, first grade. So the way you view money, the way you operate in society as an adult when it comes to money is largely cemented by second grade. And I think that is both kind of a terrifying statistic, but also one that should hopefully allow this kind of monkey on your back to maybe lessen a little bit, right? Of like, okay, so this isn't my fault, right? The way I view money, the money trauma I have, my money decisions weren't really my fault, right?
Right.
Yeah, once I read that statistic a couple years ago, and it just blew my mind.
7 years old, though, you know, that's dangerous, because at that time, we're not adults enough to be able to figure out what this means. You know, we're not adults enough to diagnose.
All of trauma, right? Is so much of, especially like, you know, this is why therapists, one of the first questions, you know, stereotypically they ask is like, what is your relationship with your parents like? Because, you know, so much of how we come into adulthood in every aspect of our lives, our relationships, our money, our careers, our, you know, our relationships with ourselves have everything to do with how we grew up. So allow yourself, cut yourself some slack. If a lot of this was cemented, you know, by age 7, when you might not even have known or have any memories from that time, you know, how are you then responsible entirely for your money story, right? You're responsible for your choices now, but there's so much that you can do to work through some of that financial trauma and to, again, give yourself grace and cut yourself some slack.
And so before we go, we're wrapping up shortly. You also give people career advice, career wisdom, right? And so a little bit of that is involved in your money personality quiz too, because it, you know, I took it, by the way. It was really accurate. I will tell you that. I won't tell you what I got, but I'll tell you it was very accurate. And so, you know, you talk about folks who maybe they're in corporate and maybe they have their entrepreneurial dreams, right? So just tell people what they can expect to learn about themselves from your money personality quiz.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so we have a free quiz on our website that identifies your money personality and gives you free resources, free personalized resources around that personality. So we have financial freshmen for people who are just getting started on their financial journeys. We have commander in chief for people who eventually want to be their own boss and start their own business, and a bunch of other different personalities too. So yeah, you answer a few questions, takes you less than a minute, and we give you personalized resources around that topic. So yeah, if debt is something that is stressing you out, we have the debt defeater personality with a bunch of resources around how to pay off debt, how to balance saving and spending. And so the link's in my bio. I would love to see you all and have you take the quiz and figure out what your money personality is.
Absolutely. And you have anything else to say on just the shame and guilt, like the people who are really deep into it, right? Like, what's the hope for being able to dig themselves out? Maybe they don't understand how to give themselves grace.
Yeah. Again, the first thing is to just be conscious of it. Start tracking your thoughts. So when you go to buy something, or when you go to save, or, you know, when a money decision happens, literally, like, come outside yourself and watch yourself process through that decision. You're almost like an anthropologist, right? Looking at your own life or looking at your own decisions, right? Okay. So as you're going through, you know, like, let's say you're going to buy something, right? Literally walk through, watch yourself without shame or judgment. Watch yourself, see the thing you want to buy, decide you want to buy it, take it to the cashier, pull out your credit card or pull out your debit card or cash, right? Watch yourself buy it, and then sit with that purchase for a little bit. And what's going to happen is you're going to see how your attitudes shift and change during that, let's say 20 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. I remember for me, this was a couple of years ago, there was this coat at Macy's that I found. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's on sale. I need this coat, right? And I was like, okay, I'm going to buy it. And then I took it to the register and I was standing in line and I looked at it closer and I was like, I don't think I need this coat. I don't think I want this coat. And what I told myself was, if you are still thinking about this in 48 hours, you can come back and buy it. Right?
Okay.
So if you are still thinking about this in 2 days, you can come back and buy it. No shame, no guilt. Great. Guess what?
That's good, because it at least slows the impulse, you know?
It took me 5 days before I remembered that code again. It took me 5
I guess you didn't need it.
I didn't need it and didn't really want it. I just saw it was on sale. I thought it was cute and was like, oh, okay, let's buy it. And that was a good, again, I was watching myself and being more mindful of where my mind was going. And I actually asked myself, like, okay, do you actually really want this? Let's give you 2 days to decide, right? And if you're still thinking about it, it means you really want it. And of course, I didn't, right? So as you're processing through your different money decisions, maybe you're sitting down to look at your budget, right? Or sitting down to look at your student loan balance. Literally look at your thoughts, look at how you're walking through that situation. What feelings do you have sitting down and opening up your laptop and putting in your login information, right? What do you feel after when you close your laptop and you're like, oh my gosh, right? Look at that, be mindful of it, and then cut yourself some slack. I mean, I do this in all aspects of my life. I like talking to myself like I talk to my best friend. And that's really hard, but it's super important. I wouldn't shame or judge my best friend. I wouldn't tell her that she's, a piece of crap. I wouldn't tell her things.
Good point.
So that's the same flexibility you can offer yourself. And then again, watch as you move through these financial decisions. Watch as, what happens, what are your thoughts, what are your feelings, what does your body do? And then you can start to unpack that and move to, a better relationship with your money.
Sounds beautiful. This is a great place to leave it. Folks are asking what's the name of your podcast. It's the Financial Feminist Podcast, right? And it's on iTunes, and is it Spotify as well?
Spotify and Apple are the two big ones, but you can find it.
I said iTunes. I meant Apple.
No, you can find it in iTunes too. Yeah.
You can. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to make sure we stay in touch because I want to hear more as you continue the journey. So thank you so much for being here, Tori Dunlap, of Her First 100K. And if you guys want to learn more about Tori, you can click on over to her page, and you can also take the money personality test. So have a lovely day. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Of course.